The dust of the battlefield still settles on the faces of those who fought, but the real casualties were the fundamental beliefs of a nation. This was not merely a conflict over territory, it was a violent collision of ideologies that reshaped the very concept of freedom. The cost of this war exposed deep, irreconcilable divisions within the American soul. Imagine a nation tearing itself apart over the definition of human rights and governance. The American Civil War was more than a military engagement, it was a brutal, defining lesson in the fragility of unity. It taught the world that the promises of democracy are often tethered to bloody, painful compromises. What did this devastating conflict reveal about the nature of liberty? It unveiled the perilous gap between ideal democratic theory and the messy, brutal reality of human conflict. The war forced a reckoning with the uncomfortable truths lurking beneath the surface of American exceptionalism. The result was not just new borders, but a profound, painful understanding that unity is not inherent, but must be actively forged. The world witnessed the catastrophic failure of political idealism when faced with irreconcilable human differences. The learning was stark and deeply unsettling. We are going to explore how this war fundamentally altered the global view of political conflict. Forget the simple narrative of states fighting, we will delve into the complex socio-economic forces that drove the conflict. You will discover the hidden lessons embedded in the broken treaties and shifting alliances. This video reveals the hidden truth: the Civil War was a crucible where modern political philosophy was forged in fire. We examine how the failure of political systems and the necessity of radical compromise shaped subsequent Western thought. Prepare to see the seeds of modern civil rights and political tension planted on those muddy fields. By the end of this journey, you will understand that the American Civil War is less a story of battle and more a masterclass in societal evolution. We will uncover the deep psychological scars and the enduring legacy that continues to shape contemporary debates about equality, governance, and the definition of a unified society. To understand the conflict, we must first look at the fractured landscape of the antebellum South and the rapidly industrializing North. The South, anchored in agrarian slave economies, operated under a fundamentally different social and legal structure than the industrialized North. This dichotomy created an unsustainable tension before the war even began. The core tension was not just economic, but deeply cultural and philosophical. The institution of slavery served as the nexus, binding the Southern economy to a brutal moral system that directly contradicted the burgeoning ideals of freedom and self-governance preached by the North. These differing worldviews made peaceful coexistence nearly impossible. As political discourse intensified, the conflict evolved from a sectional dispute into a fight for the very soul of the nation. The divergence of views on federal power, states' rights, and the moral implications of human bondage laid the groundwork for a catastrophic separation. The war was the dramatic manifestation of these centuries-old tensions. The true lesson of the Civil War wasn't just about states versus the Union, it was about the fundamental fracture within the American identity. It exposed the deadly consequences of entrenched ideological division and the failure of political compromise. This conflict was a brutal test of whether a unified nation could endure its own internal contradictions. Understanding the economic disparity is crucial to grasping the war's roots. The North industrialized rapidly while the South remained bound by an agrarian, slave-based economy. This foundational difference created irreconcilable political and social systems that inevitably clashed. The conflict was, at its heart, an economic and moral war. The moral argument escalated as the conflict progressed, moving beyond politics into the realm of human bondage. The defense of slavery became a central moral battle, forcing the nation to confront the inherent brutality of its institutions. This struggle redefined the very meaning of freedom and human rights in the American consciousness. Political compromises, like the Missouri Compromise and the Fugitive Slave Act, only postponed the inevitable collision. These attempts at temporary peace failed because the core issues of expansion, sovereignty, and slavery were too deeply entrenched. The political system proved fragile when faced with such fundamental moral divides. The secession of southern states marked the point of no return, transforming a political disagreement into an armed conflict. This decision shattered the notion of national unity and initiated a bloody struggle for control over the nation's future. The war was no longer a political negotiation but a fight for survival. The brutal realities of the war were exposed through horrific events, turning public perception and the moral landscape of the nation upside down. Battles were not just tactical engagements, they were deeply personal and agonizing struggles for life and death across divided lines. The cost of the war was measured in unimaginable human suffering. The emergence of figures like Abraham Lincoln provided a moral anchor during this chaos, emphasizing the preservation of the Union despite the internal strife. Leaders fought not just for territory, but for the concept of a unified, democratic nation. Their resolve became the bedrock for enduring the immense pressure of the conflict. The war forced a reckoning with the role of the government and the power of federal authority. It demonstrated the necessity of a strong, centralized system to manage vast, complex conflicts. The experience revealed the inherent tension between states' rights and the demands of a unified national security. Ultimately, the Civil War taught the world that violence, however horrific, can be a catalyst for profound change. It demonstrated that entrenched social and political injustices cannot be resolved through mere negotiation alone. The conflict showed the devastating power of organized resistance. The war's legacy is a complex lesson that the pursuit of equality and justice requires both political will and an unyielding moral commitment. It established the principle that a government must actively protect the rights of all its citizens, regardless of their origin. This painful history remains the guiding light for ongoing struggles for civil rights today. The war was not just a battle over states, but a brutal testing of the very definition of American identity. It exposed the profound chasm between abstract ideals of liberty and the harsh realities of human division and conflict. The stakes were existential, forcing a reckoning with the moral compromises made in the name of national unity. The conflict revealed the catastrophic cost of entrenched sectionalism and the destructive power of institutionalized hatred. Families were torn apart, and the concept of a unified nation faced an impossible internal choice. This phase detailed the brutal application of ideology on the ground, where political theory collided violently with human suffering. The war fundamentally shifted the American understanding of federal authority and the role of the government. It demonstrated that true national unity could only be achieved through radical political restructuring and the assertion of supreme governing power. The war forced a brutal, undeniable lesson about the necessity of a strong, unified central government. From these divisions emerged crucial lessons about the fragility of democracy and the necessity of compromise. The war showed that unchecked political polarization leads inevitably to ruin, proving that reconciliation is not merely a political act but a moral imperative. The world learned that war is the ultimate, destructive force against peaceful coexistence. The most profound learning was the hard-won truth that true freedom requires the protection of civil rights for all citizens, regardless of origin. The fight laid the groundwork for future civil rights movements, demonstrating that political freedom is meaningless without social and economic equity. This struggle redefined the meaning of liberty for generations. Furthermore, the war exposed the inherent dangers of unchecked economic disparity and the failure of systems built on slavery. It highlighted how economic structures and social hierarchies are inextricably linked to political freedom and societal stability. The collapse of the old order revealed that economic injustice fuels political conflict. The conflict taught the world the power of resilience and the necessity of rebuilding fractured societies. Despite immense loss, the eventual reconciliation demonstrated the enduring capacity of the human spirit to heal and forge a new, shared identity from devastating wounds. This act of reconstruction became a blueprint for future societal recovery. The true legacy of the Civil War is the enduring, complex dialogue about the nature of governance and the ongoing struggle for true democratic inclusion. It forced a continuous re-evaluation of what it means to be a nation, emphasizing that compromise is not surrender, but the foundation for a more stable and equitable future. The war's lessons are still actively debated today. Ultimately, the world learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the active commitment to justice and equality. The American Civil War served as a stark, agonizing reminder that history is shaped by the relentless pursuit of moral truth and the willingness to confront deep-seated injustices. The peace achieved was a difficult, ongoing process. This history teaches us that the deepest lessons are often found in the most painful conflicts. The scars of the Civil War remain visible in our political structures, our social norms, and the ongoing demand for true equality. It is a potent reminder that the path to a better world is paved with difficult, hard-fought lessons. The outcome of the Civil War was more than just a change in borders, it was a fundamental re-evaluation of what nationhood meant. The conflict exposed the deep, irreconcilable fissures within the American social and political fabric. This crucible forged a new, albeit painful, understanding of unity and divergence. From this painful history, the world inherited profound lessons about the dangers of unchecked sectionalism and the necessity of moral compromise. The war demonstrated that political division, when allowed to metastasize, leads to devastating human cost. It showed that true peace requires acknowledging the inherent rights of all groups. The legacy of the war is etched into the very structure of modern governance and the concept of federal power. It established a precedent that the government must strive, however imperfectly, to maintain a fragile union. The concept of a unified national identity, built on shared, if disputed, foundational ideals, became the enduring framework for the modern state. Today, these lessons resonate far beyond the historical battlefield. The Civil War remains a powerful, stark reminder that ignoring systemic injustices creates explosive instability. It teaches the world that dialogue, rather than conflict, is the only viable path towards solving intractable human divisions. Ultimately, the world learned that history is not just a collection of battles, but a continuous, painful education on the cost of intolerance. The Civil War's truth is that the human spirit, though fractured, possesses an innate capacity for healing and growth. Embrace this history to build a more compassionate future.